Welcome to the Tap Talks podcast. Today I'm joined by Jennie Johnson, who is the co-founder of My First 5 Years. How are you doing, Jennie? You all right?
Really well, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for coming on. And a gorgeous day in Manchester, which again I was saying is very misleading. But look, I think I always like to start these things with, for anyone who doesn't know who Jennie is, could you introduce yourself?
Gosh, so Jennie is Salford girl, left school at 16, sort of self-made, I guess. Created a business when I was about 30 called Kids Aloud, which was a childcare group based all in the Northwest. Ended up with a cluster of 8 children's nurseries, all purpose-built, all absolutely beautiful. Took 17 years to build that business. And at the time of selling the business, it was number 1 for quality across the UK, and really highly regarded as a place to send your children for the day and an amazing place to work. So that was the first business, and sold that and retired. Stayed retired for about a year. I thought I was retired for good. Everybody that knew me said, that's not what's going to happen, Jennie. And a year in, I had another idea, and that's sort of my new business now, which is My First 5 Years. I guess personally, turned 50 last year. During COVID, so that was a bit boring. Couldn't have a big party, so that's owed to me. Married, met Oliver when I was 17 in my first job. So we've known each other a long, long time, and together we've had 3 girls. The eldest is 25, 21, and 12.
Wow. Well, congratulations. You've achieved a lot. Wow.
I'm not done too bad.
Yeah. So what was your first job where you met Oliver?
So my first job was in a post room, opening the post and sending the post for an IT firm.
That just stinks of romance. I can understand why you met each other there. But no, okay, amazing. So your first business, Kids Aloud, and I remember, again, the reason I know about yourself, Jennie, is because you spoke at the Reframe event, which you were fantastic in, and you did talk about your journey, so you're going to have to repeat yourself a lot. But Kids Aloud, where did the idea come from? How did it become to the point where you sold the business in the end?
Kids Aloud was just a genuine eureka moment. So I was trying to return to a full-time job, and childcare was just causing me absolute nightmares. Sadly, my mum passed away when I was 8.5 months pregnant, and had she not, I probably would have never needed to look at childcare and what was readily available. But when I did have a look around where I lived, and it is 17 years ago, so I'm not slating childcare now. Things have moved forward an incredible amount. But back then, I couldn't find a single nursery that I was happy with. So I decided to not use nurseries and try and use friends and family to sort of cover a full-time childcare requirement so that I could return back to work. And between my best friend, my gran, and my mother-in-law, they kind of pooled together to help me return to work. Trouble with informal childcare, when people are doing you favours, it can just all get a little bit messy and a little bit stressful. And my gran, who's no longer with us, and I was her favourite grandchild, but she kind of didn't get why I was returning to work, just old school thinking. Yeah. And I guess didn't understand just how important it was that the day that she said that she'd have Jasmine, that she would always have her, come sort of hell or high water almost. So she'd quite often ring me and say that she couldn't have Jasmine for the day, and because I was dead polite and I brought up well, I'd always say, don't worry, not a problem. But of course it was a massive problem because I needed to get to work. So it was a day like that, but when I had a meeting in London, when my gran rang. So I guess I'm really glad she did ring that morning and say that she couldn't have Jasmine, because the knock-on effect of the stress and the drama that caused just got me reflecting on the fact that my life was a bit of a mess. I was incredibly stressed trying to balance all these balls, and the one that kept causing me the most drama was my childcare. And by the end of the train journey to London, I'd come up with the name Kids Aloud. I'd listed a load of services that as a full-time working mum would make my life easier, and we delivered all those services through the Kids Aloud way of doing things. And I handed him a notice the next day. So very much sort of a genuine light bulb moment of, if childcare was done like this, I would happily use it. And not only that, nearly all my mates that I talk to are having childcare dramas as well. Yeah. So there's a really opportunity here to take a very sort of old traditional market and do something very, very differently. And that's exactly what we delivered.
Wow. So you had an itch to scratch. And the rule generally is if you've got an itch to scratch, other people have that same itch to scratch, right?
Yeah, chat around. And if everybody else has got the same problem, or enough people have got the same problem, there's probably an opportunity there.
That's amazing. So what was the differentiator with Kids Aloud? I mean, you mentioned there, a great place to work, high quality childcare services. Mm-hmm. What kind of stuff did you do to make it different?
For me, to begin with, it was all about the building, and I realised later it wasn't all about the building, but the building was important. So one of the things when I was looking around, a lot of nurseries were running from sort of big sort of semi-detached Victorian houses, and they'd have children on the ground floor, the second floor, the third floor. And I didn't like the idea of my child sort of being in a room all day and just coming down 3 flights of stairs to go and use the garden to have a play in it for an hour. Also, when I looked around, the team that were looking after the kids generally didn't seem that engaged and that happy. Again, this is 20 years ago, so if you're listening to it as a full-time working mum, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty at all. Things have changed. So what I did differently for Kids Aloud was 2 key things. Every one of my nurseries was purpose-built. So one of my not-for-sale things was I want every child to be able to get out and play all day, every day, if that's what they want to do. So all of my rooms where the children spent the day opened directly out to outdoor space. We used to leave those doors open and kids could transition in and out as they chose, whether they wanted to be indoors or outdoors. So that fresh air thing, that was big for me. And then the other was just to really value the team. The team are doing an incredibly difficult job. If you work in childcare, it's tough. It's a long day. You're looking after other people's children. Children are a joy, but children are obviously challenges sometimes as well, as any parent will know. So if you're doing that 5 days a week or 4 days a week or whatever, it's a difficult job. So the more we could do to make those colleagues feel valued, appreciated, paid as well as we possibly could, that was what differentiated us. And then I had a training academy where we really invested in the professional development of the team to make sure that they were the very best that they could possibly be. And I think it was just that combination of caring about colleagues, caring about kids, caring about the environment they spend the day in, caring about the parents, just that constant think about what I could do as the owner to help everybody flourish. And that was what I got a buzz out of. What I didn't get a buzz out of was the fact that it was a highly regulated sector. And that's why I left in the end. I couldn't have another day. I got to the stage where I couldn't wake up another day under the pressure of Ofsted, health and safety executive, Ridor. We were a licensed taxi firm, literally. We had a license as a taxi firm because we had a fleet of 17 minibuses. So we were running a taxi firm. We were feeding 2,000 children a day with fresh food for breakfast, lunch and dinner. So we were also a restaurant with 2,000 covers across 8 sites. And we were a childcare company. It was so many moving parts, every part of it regulated. It just got to the point where I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't relaxing. When I went on holiday, I wasn't switching off. And I think I just had one too many sort of heavy-handed Ofsted inspectors walk through the door and just think, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't need this stress in my life. And it's a shame. I was quite angry with Ofsted to begin with because it was them. The grains of rice, and you have the grains of rice and it tips, and then all of a sudden you can't have another grain of rice. It's too many. So each of them little grains of rice I was handling, or I thought it was. And then the one thing that tipped me over the edge was an Ofsted inspection where I just thought, we got a good outcome, but we were outstanding, and it really peed me off that this woman could come into my business. And it was almost as if she'd come in a bad mood before we'd even began.
Right.
And I just felt, not doing it again, not having people, from the outside having such an influence on me and my well-being.
Sure.
And I cannot tell you, the day after I'd sold the business and it was no longer my responsibility, I realised just what I was carrying, I think. It's not till you stop carrying something that you realise how heavy it was.
Oh, God, thank God for that.
Yeah.
And was it not tough letting it go, though? Because this is a business that you were... How long were you involved in this business for?
17 years, and I built it from scratch, from an idea to, 2,000 children, 500 colleagues. A really successful business as well, right at the top of its game. So letting it go, yes and no. I think I was a little bit annoyed to begin with about the reason that I'd let it go, that, these outside influences that I had no control over were the reason ultimately that I sold the business. But equally, 2 weeks later, COVID hit. And I just thought, oh my goodness, thank goodness I am not running a business as complex as this through COVID. And I think because COVID hit, the grieving that people say they do when they sell the business, I think it just stopped because the whole world changed overnight. And I woke up, instead of thinking, feeling sorry for myself. Yeah. And why would you anyway? I've just sold my business. It should be amazing. But it is a weird feeling to thinking, oh my goodness, we can't leave the house. What are we going to do to keep ourselves sane and happy? And it changed all my thinking. And I think because of that, really, I didn't give Kids Aloud much thought because I was too busy dealing with the reality that everybody else was, which was this really strange virus that we all thought was going to kill everybody. So
incredible timing.
I think that kind of stopped that grieving process in its tracks. Yeah. And I've never looked back. Like, I drive past a number of my nurseries on a regular basis, and sometimes I'll have passengers in the car that aren't my family, and they say, oh, what does it feel like driving past? And it's like, I don't even notice it anymore. I mean, I'm incredibly proud of what I've achieved, and I know some of the team will never forgive me for selling it. I mean, literally, my managing director, he got me a pen for my 50th birthday, and it was engraved, "I still hate you." And he doesn't really, but you know what I mean. It's just I had a way of running that business, and people enjoyed working for me, and I know they were sad to see me go on the whole. So that's the only thing that I ever feel a little bit bad about.
But similarly, they must have known how stressed you were and how much you were having to deal with. So I think from that point of view, it must be
absolutely. And the business that I sold it to and the person that I sold it to, it couldn't have been a better business or a nicer person. I know the chief executive of the new business, and I know that she runs a good ship, and that was important to me, who I sold to. So I can hold my head up and say that I sold to the very best person that could have taken that business forward, and that's what I did.
Amazing. So you do that. COVID's hit. Unfortunately, not a very relaxing retirement, I guess, for that year then, because if you were during COVID. When did the idea for My First 5 Years come about? What happened then?
That came about a year later, and it was almost a year to the day. And it was strange, really, because so it was COVID, and you had everybody got into the little routines, didn't they? So one of my little routines was that I'd take the dog for a walk, and there's this new bakery in Didsbury that sells the most gorgeous bread. And I think because no one had much to do during COVID, everyone was going and queuing round the corner to get a loaf of bread from this amazing bakery. So I was doing that one day, and one of my professionals that I worked with virtually the entire time that I had Kids Allowed was also in the queue. So I was like, when you've got your stuff, let's sit on the wall and have a brew. And we literally sat like 2 meters away from each other having a brew. And he's like, what are you doing, Jenny? I was like, I'm retired. He's like, yeah, but what are you doing? I was like, I'm retired. Told you I was retiring. I'm staying retired. And he's like, bollocks, you're not staying retired, Jenny. Everybody that knows you knows that you're not going to stay retired. And I'm like, nope, you're wrong. I'm definitely staying retired. I said, yeah, things pop into my head and stuff, but there's nothing that's come up that I'm thinking is something that's going to entice me out of retirement, and I'm happy as I am. And within about 24 hours of that meeting, something popped into my head that I couldn't shift, which is the My First 5 Years idea. And that was a COVID idea as well, because I saw a video of on a WhatsApp group. Somebody sent me a video of a child, just in their eyes, the child was just doing something cute. And it was cute. But to my early years eyes, that child was doing something amazing. They'd kind of mastered a new skill, as we're now calling them. And I was looking at it thinking, I bet if Mum knew what I was seeing, she'd like feel even more amazing about this video. So I picked up the phone to Mum and I said, I just thought I'd let you know what I see. I said, it is incredibly cute, because everybody else has sort of put, oh, cute, 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 cute. And I'm looking at it thinking it's more than cute. So I picked up the phone to Mum and I told her what I saw. And she's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I didn't know what I was seeing. And now that you've told me that, I just feel brilliant, because, we always worry as mums, don't we, that our kids are not learning, or they're not developing, or they're not where they should be. So it was really nice for you to have picked up the phone and told me that. So didn't think any more of it, that conversation. It wasn't that conversation, or it wasn't that moment that sparked the idea. So I went to bed that night, and all I can think is that I must have dreamed about that all night, because I can't explain it to you, but I genuinely woke up at 6 o'clock the next morning, like bolt upright, like you see in a stupid movie, going, woke my husband up and I went, I've got an idea. I've got an idea for an amazing new business. And he's like, Jen, go back to sleep. I was like, no, I can't.
Cheers, Oliver.
He went back to sleep. And I got up, and we've got an office at home, and I went and sat in the office at home, and I started sort of formulating what was in my brain, but it was almost already formulated. I can't explain it. It was like a fully formed idea. So sat at the desk and I started researching whether anybody else was already doing it, whether it was a path already so well trodden that even if it was a brilliant idea, somebody had already done it. And within an hour or so, everything that my research was showing me was that this was just a brilliant opportunity, great timing. Nobody's doing it in the way that we want to do it. And should pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. I picked up the phone to the one person I would go on this venture with, my co-founder, Alistair Bryce-Clegg, because what he doesn't know about early years, he knows it deeply. He knows deeply how children tick, how they learn, how they develop. And as much as I have a grounding in early years, I don't have that deep expertise. I'm expert in running a childcare group, and I know a lot, but I'm not an expert. So I wanted to make sure that I partnered with an expert, but also an expert that I would enjoy working with, because there's lots of early years experts out there. But are there early experts that you'd enjoy working with, but also that parents would enjoy listening to? Because when you listen to my co-founder speak, it's just a joy to listen to. He's really important messages, but said with fun and humour, and they just sort of pull you in. So anyway, I messaged him, and usually if COVID hadn't hit, because he's an international sort of keynote speaker and early years expert, he would have said, love that idea, but my diary's booked up for 2 years, so there's nothing I can do, even if I wanted to. But of course, because COVID had hit, his diary was clear. So it was like all the stars were aligned, and he wanted 24 hours to think about it. I think I chased him after 12. I said, come on, you're coming or not? And, we came up with a name, registered the business, protected all our social platforms and all that good stuff that you need to do to get going. And we just got going. And that was another sort of, by 6 o'clock in the morning, waking up with the idea. By 10 o'clock, I was having meetings with app developers, marketeers. I was just pulling on my network, and I hadn't told any of them, obviously, that I'd had the idea 4 hours earlier.
Yes.
And I went out for lunch with one of them. So in the end, we went with a company called Apadme.
Oh, yes.
A really highly respected app development company. So we worked with them to bring the idea to fruition. Howard Sims, who's one of the co-founders of Apadme, I had a call with him on 10 o'clock that day. And I was saying to him, how long do you think I've been thinking about that hour when I had that first conversation with you? He said, I remember it dead clearly. He said, probably, 3 or 4 months? And I said, 3 or 4 hours. And he was like, God, you just sounded like it was all like ready to go. And I said, it just the strangest thing it was. I genuinely woke up with that idea fully formed in my brain.
Yeah.
And what my first 5 years now has done is it's done its minimum viable product. We had 2,000 parents of young children test it with us. I've not even said what it is actually, which is always a good starting point, but basically it's a parenting app, and it supports parents from the birth of their child through those first 5 years of life, and really just supports a parent. We sort of say go from good to great. And that's what the app does. It sort of holds your hand every single day with thoughts, ideas, things, interactions you can do with your children, activities you can do with your children that help them learn, helps parents understand what they're seeing, how to respond to it, how they can support their children. And what we're trying to do is just help empower parents with knowledge.
Yeah.
So that they know they're doing the right thing and that they're doing the best. And it's just really exciting. So those 2,000 parents work with us to sort of give us feedback and thoughts and ideas on our minimum viable product. And then we responded to that, and we transitioned to the App Store about 90 days ago. And it's going well. It's going really well. We've been featured on the App Store twice already. So they've seen it and love it. And we're expecting to be App of the Day this week, which will be phenomenal. And Apadme is saying, this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen to startups that Apple have featured you 3 times. But what we've done is good. And, if you've got a child and you're listening to this, only on Apple at the moment, Android is coming soon. But download it and let us know what you think, because we're in a test and learn phase with it now. We've secured... so we're 15 months in at the point of this interview. We've raised just shy of £2 million, and we're working hard now for this next 12 months to just really understand what our cost of acquisition is, what the lifetime value of our customers are. There are people in this space that have 7 to 8 million customers. So, there's a huge opportunity to be, a real commercial success. But for us, it's that sort of doing well by doing good. So one of our key mantras is that everything we do is right for parents and children. So, I know there's quite a technical audience listening to this potentially, and one of the things that you always want your app to be is, what do they call it? Gamification.
Sure.
And that's just such a it's a word I'm not that comfortable with when it comes to parents and children, but I get the concept. It's making sure your app's sticky and that people come back and use it. What I want to make sure is that the habits we're forming in using our app are good for parents and good for children. It's so easy to forget that and just think, what can we do to hook them in?
Yeah.
But it's got to be right. It's got to be the right drivers, that those drivers are going to be driving good behaviours for parents and children. So I think that's what I mean by doing well by doing good. Sometimes there's low-hanging fruit that's not morally right.
Yeah.
And we're a company that make the right decisions, and very much ran Kids Aloud that way. It wasn't about the profit, it wasn't about the bottom line, it was about delivering an exceptional experience and an amazing place to work, and then we'd be so full that we'd make money anyway.
Yes.
And I think it's the same with this. There's every opportunity that we could be incredibly successful. Equally, there's every opportunity that I could be crying into my beer this time next year.
Who knows?
But I'm not expecting
We'll do a follow-up
that to be
interview.
the case. You can do a follow-up interview and I'll be either really happy or really not happy. There are never any guarantees, are there? But, life's about having a go.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced this app is life-changing to parents that download it and buy into the ethos of what we're trying to do, which is to support them and empower them and help them reframe how they think about what they see. Because even a tantrum that your child's having, and a tantrums could be a controversial word in the early years space, but a parent knows what we mean when we use these words. They're stressful. If your child's having a tantrum in Tesco's, it's not a great, thing to be dealing with. Nearly every child has put the parents through that. Mm-hmm. So the parents that are walking past are not giving you a dirty look. They're thinking, oh, bless. Thank God it's not me today. I've been there. So even just thinking like that helps. But also, for a child to have a tantrum, it means that their development has hit a certain milestone, which means that they're able to process these things. So even reframing a tantrum and going, oh, they've not done one of them before, that's a learning milestone.
Yes.
And, of course, then over time, we want to help children regulate those feelings, but they're not developmentally ready yet. So let's just go with this tantrum, because we'll help you reframe and understand what you're seeing and why that's happening and how you can support and help them and meet them where they are. So, yeah, it's all that good stuff. I'm getting really passionate. And
no, I know that was going to be my next thing, actually. I think I say across from a lot of business owners, and the ones that always seem to be doing really well and are really successful, and it's clear why you've been so successful, and I'm sure this will be as well, and it clearly is because you are so, you can just tell, and anyone watching this will know you are so passionate clearly about this subject, and what it can do for people. But I guess because you've gone through this already, 3 times, right?
Gone through it 3 times as a parent, but also supported thousands and thousands of parents over those 17 years go through this and help them understand that things are normal, or that things that they find challenging behaviours are just developmentally where their child is at, and help them reframe that thinking. But in the context of Kids Aloud, we were doing that one parent at a time, face to face. And what we're trying to do with this app is help millions of parents throughout the world understand this stuff.
The amazing use of technology, right? And
exactly,
how,
for good. Yeah.
Wow. So next step for my first 5 years, what's the plan in 12 months' time when we look back at my first 5 years?
Well, genuinely, 12 months from now, we'll be doing another fundraise, because that's
amazing.
Just about when we run out of money.
Right, perfect.
But in the time between now and then, we are just in this big test and learn phase. We're really now tweaking the app, understanding for example, the onboarding journey. Where are we losing customers? What can we do to change that, to make that experience better? So lots of tweaking to improve the app itself. Then we've not done our paid for marketing strategy yet, so we launch that next month. So we're signing off all the marketing materials, and hopefully you'll see us all over the place on socials and with our paid for strategy. Then we'll start to understand what our cost per acquisition is, and is that sustainable? Is it going to work? What can we do to tweak the cost per acquisition to get it down? Every time we get it down by a few pennies, it makes it more and more sustainable. So yeah, we're just on a journey, and I'm on a big learning journey of my own, because I've never run a tech company before. A tech. I've
tech
never run a
company.
tech company before. So, a lot of it is common sense. But nonetheless, we're bringing a tech team in-house now. We've just made a really important hire of our head of product, and he comes highly recommended. And that's really exciting now that we're really beginning to get our top team more established. We're out there at the moment. Again, I'll use this opportunity to say, but we're looking for a head of marketing who we expect to be of the caliber that will become our CMO. So yeah, we're building the team, building the app, building the customer base. We're in a big build mode.
That's amazing. It's so exciting. It's amazing to hear that you've got your head of product in place now, because that's usually like the tipping point of like, okay, we've got someone who's
getting serious now.
Yeah, now it's getting serious.
And expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Wow, incredible. So look, I guess talking about test and learn phase, through your journey of all the amazing things that you've done, has there ever been a time that sticks in your head where you really messed up? And what have you learned from it? Just to give, I guess, business owners out there who are going through a similar sort of journey as you, hope.
I'll share a Kids Aloud one, and I'll share a My First 5 Years one.
Great.
So my Kids Aloud one was when we opened our second site, we had a parent complaint, and it was the first proper serious parent complaint that we'd had. And simply put, a parent had brought their child to nursery without having had breakfast. And I think they'd arrived shortly after 9 o'clock, and the colleague in the room had said, "Sorry, breakfast is over." So this poor parent had turned up at our nursery with a hungry child and been told, in effect, tough. Rightly, the mum rang me from the car and went, "Hang on a minute, Jenny, you told me, all these wonderful things about your nursery, yes to any reasonable request, all that good stuff. And I've turned up today and been told you won't give my child breakfast. Are you being serious?" So I was like, first of all, I'm really sorry. That shouldn't have happened. I'll sort it, which I did. But then the whole reflection of how the hell has that just happened in my business? How on earth does that colleague know that that was a yes? Of course we'll get your child breakfast. And my big learning there was that if you're going to have a multi-site business and you're not present everywhere, in every room, seeing what's going on, you have got to be really, really clear that the people that join your business absolutely know what your values are. There's no point in being up here in my head. It's got to be something that is absolutely clear. So I went on a massive journey about getting everything out of my head. What are the values? Distilling them into something that was really, something that people could get behind, that they'd want to be on that journey with us. And then trying to ensure that 500 colleagues would consistently know, how to respond to these situations and what the expectations will be of a colleague working at Kids Aloud. So that was a massive sort of learning journey. And as part of that, also knowing that sometimes you're going to have colleagues that are not on board.
Yeah.
And actually you need to deal with that. And that was a big learning for me as well, that to begin with, let's just pick a number out of the air. Say I had 100 colleagues, maybe 10 of them were not performing. I'd spend all my time focusing on the 10.
Yeah.
And actually, you spend your time on the 90. They're the ones doing the job brilliantly. They're the ones that you should be celebrating. And you deal with the 10. Either they become part of the 90 or they shouldn't be in your business. And that was important learning for me. So I would say, tolerating poor performance for too long, not dealing with toxic colleagues, and not being clear what you expect from people. So all those learnings I've brought forward into my first 5 years. The cock up with my first 5 years was we totally messed up monetisation. Like the way that we implemented Give Us Your Money was really, really, really clumsy. Just too many assumptions made about the fact that parents will read stuff. Because they don't, they're busy, they're tired, they've not had a good night's sleep. So I've really learned that in an app, you have to be, if there's something you want to make sure people have read, you've got to make it absolutely in the face. If you're subtle about stuff, it just confuses people. So we messed that up royally, turned it off, and we're turning it back on again in a much, much better way. So yeah, that's two completely different types of learning in two different sectors.
I think it's such a valuable thing to mention. The first one at Kids Aloud is if you obviously you cannot be present in every single site in a multi-site business, kind of like a McDonald's sort of thing, right? Quality can very easily start to slip. But if you have a very clear list of values and they are easy to remember through, I don't know, things like alliteration or making them digestible, and also the fact is, like, if you have people in your business, like you said, I think a lot of people make that mistake where they focus on people that are underperforming,
Yeah.
you're putting all your effort into them, and then the people that are doing really, really well get neglected, and they're like, why the hell am I here? I'm not getting any development. I'm not getting focused on. But yeah, and then you got to make that tough call, like either the book up or book off sort of thing.
Exactly.
You know?
Or something that rhymes with it.
Yeah, something rhymes with that. But that's amazing. Okay, well, fantastic. Look, I always like to finish these off, and I know you say you're not a big kind of like business book reader. You read a lot of fiction, which I think is amazing. For you, any books you've read recently, anything you would recommend?
Honestly, don't read much at all on either genre, but I had recommended to me Where the Crawdads Sing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't read, so I did that on Audible.
Right.
But I really enjoyed it, and fabulous book. I'd highly recommend it. I'm really struggling to find a second book now, because I start listening to one and I get to the end of chapter 1, and if it's not gripped me, I'm kind of bored with it. So I'm really struggling to get a second book. So if you're listening to this and there's a comment section, maybe anything amazing that you've read that might grip me, then let me know. As regards business books, I've genuinely only read one. And it was a picture book. I had it read in about an hour, which suits me down to the ground, because I really do have a very short attention span. I drive my EA absolutely insane. She knows now just to bullet point everything and send it as short and sweet as possible. Yeah. But it was the Timpsons book on upside down management, and absolutely transformed how I thought about my role as a chief exec, which is that we're not at the top of the pyramid. We're at the bottom, invert the pyramid, and actually we're the least important person in the business, and the most important people in the business are the people that are, doing the job, liaising with the customers right there at the front of the business. And it was just a eureka moment for me. But honestly, it's a picture book. It's like reading a Mr. Man book.
Oh, brilliant.
So I loved it.
Yeah.
But it changed how I thought about being a leader, and that actually there's lots of different types of leaders, but one of the types of leaders that there are is a servant leader, and I kind of see myself as one of those, somebody that listens, responds, and creates an environment for people to flourish. My other thing is that I do Blinkist. So let's say, I don't know, I'm on a learning curve about social media and, social media marketing or something like that. I'll go on Blinkist and see if there's a few titles I could read. I'm not reading them, I'm listening to them. But even that I listen to on 2 times. Okay. So Blinkist takes a book and distills it into its key messages. I think it's usually 7 blinks. And it takes about 15 minutes to listen to this non-fiction book about whatever the topic is. So I typically listen to one of those in 7 minutes. And that's about enough for me. Yeah. After the 7 minutes, I'm like, right, I'm done. But I just think that's a brilliant way. I think there's so much fluff in most of these books, because people have to justify why you're paying whatever you're paying for a big, big thick book. Absolutely. Whereas actually, usually at the end of a book like that, if you walk away with 2 or 3 nuggets that you're going to apply to your business, then that's good. So if I can do that in 7 minutes, that's what I'm going to do. Wow, I love that. Okay, brilliant. Well, look, it's been wonderful having you on. I'm so excited to hear about my first 5 years. Pleasure. And incredibly excited to see where you're going to be in the next 12 to 24 months. Anyone listening to this, download it. It's an amazing app. And yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you very much for having me.